I never thought I'd be the person posting this here. I honestly never thought I'd end up posting here, but here we are. I've been lurking on this subreddit for years, always thinking, man, those stories are brutal. Glad that's not my life. Turns out I was just early. My wife, 32F, and I, 34M, have been married for almost 8 years, together for 11. From the outside we looked like one of those couples people secretly envied. We had decent jobs, a nice house, a dog that somehow liked everyone, and enough inside jokes to make our friends roll their eyes. But if I'm being real, things started changing about 6 months ago. At first it was small stuff. She became strangely defensive over things that never used to matter. If I asked how work was, she'd snap, "Why are you interrogating me?" Then 5 minutes later she'd act like nothing happened. She started telling little lies too, the kind that seemed too pointless to even bother with. She'd say she worked late, but I'd see her coworker post a photo online showing the whole office had left hours earlier. When I mentioned it, she'd instantly come up with another story. It became a pattern. Every explanation had another explanation behind it. Every question somehow turned into my fault. If I caught one lie, she'd tell 3 more to cover it up, then accuse me of having trust issues. I actually started wondering if I was losing my mind. Then everything got weird really fast. She suddenly changed her phone password after years of us knowing each other's codes. She started sleeping with her phone under her pillow. If a notification popped up while we were watching TV, she'd grab it before I even noticed the screen light up. When I asked about it, she laughed. "You're acting paranoid." Maybe I was. Or maybe that was exactly what she wanted me to believe. At that point, I still had no proof that anything was happening. Just a growing feeling in my stomach that my marriage wasn't the marriage I thought it was. I kept telling myself not to jump to conclusions. People get stressed. Jobs get busy. Marriages go through rough patches. I repeated those excuses so many times they almost sounded convincing. The problem was that her stories kept changing. One Friday she texted me saying she was having dinner with 2 coworkers after work. No big deal. I even replied, "Have fun." About an hour later, I opened Instagram while waiting for my takeout. One of those coworkers had posted a story from a completely different restaurant, with a group photo. My wife wasn't in it. I figured maybe she'd left early. When she got home around 11:30, I casually asked how dinner was. Without missing a beat she said, "It was just the 3 of us." I mentioned the Instagram story. She froze for half a second before rolling her eyes. "Oh. We changed places after I left." The problem? The story had been uploaded only 20 minutes before she walked through our front door. I didn't argue. I just nodded. The next morning she acted unusually sweet. She made breakfast, hugged me for no reason, and even suggested we spend the weekend together. It felt rehearsed. Then another curveball hit. On Sunday afternoon, someone rang our doorbell. It was a guy I'd never seen before. The second my wife looked through the window and saw him, every bit of color disappeared from her face. She rushed to the door before I could get there. "I still heard enough. I told you not to come here." His voice was low, but I caught one sentence. "You blocked my number. We need to talk." She shoved him back outside and slammed the door. When I asked who he was, she answered immediately. "Wrong address." No hesitation. No explanation. Just another lie. Because as she walked away, I noticed something I'd never seen before. Her hands were shaking. I should have pushed harder that day. Instead, I let it go. Not because I believed her, but because I wanted to. There's a huge difference. For the next week, she acted like the guy at our door had never existed. Every time I brought it up, she'd get irritated. "Seriously? You're still on that? It was the wrong house. Can you stop making everything into some conspiracy? Eventually, I stopped asking. I started watching. That's when I noticed something I wish I hadn't. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she'd leave work at almost the exact same time. But instead of coming home, her location would disappear. We shared our phone locations for years, and suddenly hers would randomly stop updating for 2 or 3 hours. When I mentioned it, she had an answer ready. My battery died. Twice a week. Every week. Somehow. Then she'd say her phone charger at work was broken. A few days later she'd claim her GPS had been glitching. Then she'd insist our phone carrier was having issues. Every lie contradicted the last one, but she never seemed to care. She just expected me to accept whichever version she was telling that day. The weirdest part? She started accusing me of cheating. Out of nowhere. Who were you texting? Why are you smiling at your phone? You're home late. Want to explain that? I work in IT. Half the time I was answering Slack messages or dealing with emergency server issues. She knew that. She'd known it for years. Still, every innocent thing I did suddenly became suspicious. Looking back, it felt like she was trying to keep me on the defensive so I wouldn't notice what she was doing. Then came the moment that finally cracked the whole thing open. It happened on a Wednesday night. She jumped into the shower after getting home, leaving her smartwatch on the kitchen counter to charge. I wasn't snooping. I was literally making coffee. Then the watch buzzed. A message flashed across the screen before it locked. Last night was amazing. Miss you already. Red heart. No name. Just a heart emoji and those 7 words. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I was going to throw up. For a second, I stood there frozen, staring at the blank screen after the notification disappeared. I remember hearing the shower running upstairs. I remember my coffee overflowing onto the counter because I'd forgotten I was making it. And I remember realizing, for the first time, that all those little lies probably weren't little at all. They were just the edges of something much bigger. I wish I could say I handled it calmly. I didn't. The second she came downstairs, I was still standing in the kitchen. The coffee had gone cold. The smartwatch was exactly where she'd left it. She looked at me, then at the watch. I watched the realization hit her. What? She asked. I didn't yell. I just said. Who texted you? She blinked once. What are you talking about? Your watch lit up. Another pause. Then came lie number 1. Oh, that? It was Melissa. We joke around like that. I stared at her. Melissa called you last night and sent a heart? She didn't even hesitate before switching stories. Lie number 2. Okay, fine. It wasn't Melissa. It was my cousin. We were talking about girls' night. My wife didn't even have a cousin in town. She knew I knew that. Then came lie number 3. You must have read it wrong. That one almost made me laugh. I didn't read it wrong. Now she got angry. You shouldn't be looking at my notifications. There it was. Not, I'm sorry. Not, it's not what it looks like. Just somehow making me the bad guy. I asked one more question. Who is he? Silence. She crossed her arms. I don't owe you every conversation I have. That sentence hit harder than I expected. 11 years together. 8 years married. And suddenly I was being treated like some nosy roommate. I told her I wanted to see her phone. She laughed. Actually laughed. No. Just. No. Then she grabbed her car keys, picked up her jacket, and walked toward the front door. I asked where she was going. She shrugged. Out. I stood in the hallway, completely stunned. So you're seriously leaving right now? She turned around just long enough to say something I'll never forget. If you can't trust me, that's your problem. Then she slammed the door. About 20 minutes later, my phone rang. It wasn't her. It was an unknown number. When I answered, a man said 5 words that changed everything. She lied to both of us. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. I honestly thought it was some kind of prank. Then the guy sighed. I know this is probably the last call you expected tonight. Who is this? My name's Daniel. I recognized it immediately. The man from my front door. The one she claimed had the wrong address. He sounded exhausted. Not angry. Just defeated. I didn't know she was married when we met, he said. She told me she was divorced. Said her ex refused to move out because of financial issues. I felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. You're lying. I wish I was. I wanted to hang up. Instead, I listened. He told me they'd been seeing each other for almost 5 months. According to him, she'd introduced him to friends, spent weekends with him, and talked about taking a vacation together. Then, about 3 weeks earlier, she'd suddenly become distant. She stopped answering calls. Started canceling plans. Finally, she blocked him everywhere. That's why he'd shown up at our house. He hadn't been trying to ruin my marriage. He'd been trying to figure out why the woman he thought he was dating had disappeared overnight. I found out the truth yesterday, he said quietly. One of her coworkers slipped up and mentioned her husband. My chest tightened. He apologized to me. Over and over. Then he asked if I wanted proof. I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to say no. Because as long as I didn't see it, maybe some tiny part of me could still pretend this wasn't real. He must have sensed that. I have messages. Photos. Hotel confirmations. Everything. I closed my eyes. Every late night. Every fake work dinner. Every dead phone battery. Every ridiculous excuse. It all suddenly fit together. I whispered. Send it. About 30 seconds later, my phone exploded with notifications. Photos. Screenshots. Receipts. Videos. One picture stopped me cold. It was taken just 6 days earlier. My wife was wearing the exact dress she'd told me she had bought for a work networking event. She wasn't at a networking event. She was holding Daniel's hand, smiling at him the same way she used to smile at me. That was the moment denial finally died. There was no misunderstanding anymore. There was only the truth. And somehow, the worst part was that she still hadn't come home. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was crying the whole time or because I was dramatically throwing things around like some movie scene. It was worse. I just sat there. Quiet. Staring at my phone, scrolling through proof of a life I thought I knew. Every photo felt like another piece of my marriage disappearing. The hotel receipts were the hardest part. Not because of the money. Not because of where she was. Because of the dates. One of them was from the weekend she told me she had to visit her mother because she needed some space. I remember that weekend. I remember feeling guilty for not going with her. I remember ordering her favorite food when she came home because I thought she had a stressful few days. Meanwhile, she had been with him. That realization messed with my head more than anything. It wasn't just the cheating. It was the fact that she was letting me live inside a fake reality. The next morning, she finally came home. Around 7 a.m. She walked in expecting an argument. I could tell. Her shoulders were tense. Her face was already prepared for a fight. But I wasn't angry anymore. Not yet. I just looked tired. She noticed my phone on the table. She noticed the screenshots. And for the first time in years, she had nothing ready to say. "What did you do?" she asked. I almost couldn't believe it. "What did I do?" She immediately became defensive. "How did you get those?" I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was unbelievable. "You are more upset that I found out than you are that you did it." Her expression changed. Then came the excuses. The ones I had secretly been expecting. It wasn't serious. I was confused. We were having problems. You weren't paying attention to me. I felt lonely. Every sentence somehow avoided responsibility. I asked her one simple question. "Did you ever plan on telling me?" She looked away. That was my answer. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. I didn't know how. I stared at her. "You didn't know how to tell me you were having an affair, so you decided to lie every day instead?" She started crying. Real tears. Maybe. I don't know anymore. And that was the hardest part. Because I spent years knowing this person better than anyone. Now I couldn't tell what was real and what was another performance. The next few days were probably the strangest days of my life. My wife went from acting like nothing was wrong to acting like she was terrified of losing everything. She suddenly wanted to talk all the time. She wanted to explain every detail. She wanted me to understand why. And I did want answers. I really did. But every answer seemed to create 5 more questions. She told me Daniel wasn't special. That was one of the first things she said. I don't know why, but that hurt almost as much as the cheating itself. Because if he wasn't special, then what was I supposed to make of all those lies? All those risks? All those decisions? She couldn't even explain that. Then came another surprise. Daniel messaged me again. I almost ignored it. I didn't want another piece of this nightmare. But he said he had something I needed to know. I met him at a coffee shop. Honestly, it was awkward. Imagine sitting across from the person your spouse cheated with. There's no rulebook for that. I expected to hate him. I expected to be furious. But he wasn't the villain I had imagined. He was just another person who had been lied to. He showed me more messages between him and my wife. And there was one thing that stood out. She had told him she was planning to leave me. She had said our marriage was already over. She had said I was emotionally checked out. I read those messages over and over. Because I remembered that time differently. Yes, we had problems. Yes, we argued. But I thought we were working through them. Apparently, she had already rewritten our entire relationship in her head. When I got home, I asked her about it. She didn't deny it. That was becoming her new pattern. No more pretending. Just carefully choosing what parts of the truth she would admit. I was unhappy, she said. I nodded. Then why didn't you leave? She started crying. I was scared. And maybe that was true. But being scared didn't excuse destroying someone else's life. I told her something that night that I had been thinking for days. I could have handled you falling out of love with me. I could have handled you saying you wanted a different life. What I can't understand is why you looked me in the eyes every day and kept choosing to lie. She didn't have an answer. For once, she had nothing to say. And honestly, that silence told me more than any apology could. The week after everything came out felt like I was living someone else's life. I would wake up and forget for a few seconds. I'd look over at the other side of the bed and think, okay, we're going to talk about this today. Then reality would hit. The marriage I thought I had was gone. Not officially. Not legally. But emotionally? Something had already broken. My wife started doing everything she should have done months earlier. She became transparent. She left her phone on the table. She told me where she was going. She offered to answer questions. She even suggested couples therapy. The problem was that none of it felt comforting anymore. It felt like security measures after a crime. I hated that I thought that way. Because part of me still loved her. That was the part one struggled with the most. People always talk about betrayal like one person just wakes up and stops caring. That's not how it worked for me. I could be furious at her and still miss her. I could hate what she did and still remember why I fell in love with her. Those two feelings existed at the same time, and it was exhausting. Then another unexpected thing happened. Her best friend called me. I almost didn't answer. I figured she was calling to defend my wife. Instead, she said, "I need to tell you something because you deserve the truth." My stomach dropped. Apparently, she had suspected something for months. She had noticed my wife changing. The sudden secrecy. The excuses. The strange behavior. But she said my wife always had an explanation ready. And here's the part that really hurt. My wife had apparently told her friend that I would never leave. That sentence stuck with me. Not because it was insulting. Because it explained so much. Somewhere along the way, my wife stopped seeing me as a person who could be hurt. I became something permanent. Something she assumed would always be there. That night, I asked her directly. "Did you think I would stay no matter what?" She didn't answer immediately. And that pause was enough. Finally, she whispered. "I thought we would figure it out." I looked at her and realized something. She wasn't afraid of losing me until she actually felt me slipping away. And that was a painful thing to accept. Because I didn't want to be someone's wake-up call. I wanted to be someone's choice. I started seeing a therapist a couple of weeks after everything came out. Not because I had decided to stay. Not because I had decided to leave. Honestly, I had no idea what I wanted. I just knew I couldn't keep waking up every morning with my head spinning, trying to solve a problem that I didn't create. The first thing my therapist told me was something I didn't want to hear. You don't have to decide the future of your marriage while you're still processing what happened. That was hard for me. I'm the kind of person who likes fixing things. Broken appliance? Fix it. Work problem? Solve it. Car making a weird noise? Figure it out. But this wasn't a broken machine. This was a person I trusted who made choices that changed everything. There was no quick repair. Meanwhile, my wife was trying to prove she was serious about changing. She started therapy too. She wrote me a long letter. I almost didn't read it. Part of me thought it would just be another explanation, another attempt to make me understand why she did what she did. But I read it anyway. And surprisingly, it wasn't defensive. For the first time, she actually admitted things without adding a but. She admitted she lied. She admitted she manipulated conversations. She admitted she made me question my own instincts. That last part hit me hard. Because I realized the worst damage wasn't just the affair. It was that I had spent months thinking I was the problem. I thought I was paranoid. I thought I was too suspicious. I thought I was failing as a husband. Meanwhile, my gut had been screaming at me. Then another surprise happened. Daniel reached out one last time. He said he wanted to apologize and that he wouldn't contact me again after that. He told me something I didn't expect. She told me you two were basically strangers. But when I saw the pictures in your house, I realized that wasn't true. I didn't know how to respond. Because that was the thing. My wife and I weren't strangers. We had a whole life together. A real one. A complicated one. A flawed one. But real. And she replaced honesty with a fantasy instead of admitting she was unhappy. That night, I sat alone in the living room for hours. I looked around at the house we bought together. The photos on the walls. The little things she had picked out. Everything felt like a museum of a relationship that might not exist anymore. For the first time, I asked myself the question I had been avoiding. Even if she becomes the person she should have been all along, do I still want this marriage? That question stayed in my head for days. Not, can I forgive her? Not, can she change? But, do I actually want to rebuild this? And I hated that I didn't have an easy answer. Because everyone around me seemed to have one. My brother said, you know what you have to do. Some friends said, there's no coming back from that. A few people surprised me by saying, only you know what your marriage was really like. The truth was, they were all right in different ways. I was the only person who knew the good parts. I was also the only person who knew how badly the bad parts had started affecting me. My wife noticed I was pulling away. She kept asking if I had made a decision. I hadn't. But she seemed desperate for one. You don't love me anymore, do you? That question made me angry. Not because it was impossible. Because it was unfair. I told her. This isn't about whether I love you. I spent 11 years loving you. That's exactly why this hurts so much. She got quiet. Then she said something I didn't expect. I think I was selfish because I believed losing you was impossible. That was probably the first time I felt like she actually understood the damage. Not completely. Maybe not even close. But enough to stop making it about her feelings. A few days later, we had another conversation. A real one. No yelling. No excuses. I asked her things I had been afraid to ask. Why Daniel? Why lie so much? Why come home and act normal? She struggled with the answers. She said she liked how she felt around him. She said she liked being someone new instead of the person with responsibilities and problems. I asked her. So you wanted an escape? She nodded. And I became the thing you escaped from. She started crying. No. You weren't. But I couldn't ignore the fact that her actions said otherwise. Then she said something that changed the way I looked at the whole situation. I don't know if I was trying to leave you. I think I was trying to avoid admitting I was unhappy. That didn't excuse anything. But it was the first honest thing she'd said in a long time. And honestly, that almost made it harder. Because anger is simple. Anger gives you a clear direction. But when the person who hurt you finally starts telling the truth, you have to deal with the complicated parts. And I wasn't sure I was ready for that. A month after my wife moved out, we finally had the conversation we had both been avoiding. The one about the future. Not the past. Not the affair. Not who was more hurt. Just. What happens now? I had spent a lot of time thinking about it. At first, I thought the answer would be obvious. Someone cheats, you leave. Simple. Except nothing about 11 years of your life is simple. This wasn't just some random relationship. This was the person who sat next to me when my dad was sick. The person who helped me through losing jobs and failures. The person who knew all my weird habits and still laughed at my terrible jokes. Walking away wasn't just walking away from a person. It was walking away from a whole version of my life. But staying had its own fear. Could I ever trust her again? Could I stop wondering every time she was late? Could I hear a notification without feeling sick? Could I rebuild something that had been broken by the person who was supposed to protect it? I told her all of this. She listened. And for once, she didn't interrupt. She didn't defend herself. She didn't try to convince me. She just said, "I understand." That actually meant more than all the apologies before. Because I finally felt like she was accepting the consequences instead of trying to escape them. We decided not to rush into divorce immediately. But we also didn't pretend everything was fixed. We started over slowly. Separate living. Therapy. Honest conversations. No promises that we would definitely make it. Just two people trying to figure out if there was anything worth rebuilding. A few weeks later, another surprise happened. I found out she had told her family the full truth. Not the edited version. Not the "we were having problems" version. The actual truth. She admitted what she did. She admitted the lies. She admitted she hurt me. That mattered because for months I felt like I was carrying the shame of something I didn't do. I realized I had been protecting her reputation while she was the one who broke the trust. I don't know what the final outcome will be yet. Maybe we'll rebuild. Maybe we won't. But either way, I'm choosing what happens next instead of just reacting to what happened to me. So here I am, about 6 months after finding that message on her watch. A lot has happened. A lot hasn't. And honestly, that's probably the most realistic part of this whole thing. People expect these situations to have a clean ending. Either the couple stays together and everything is magically fixed, or they split up and everyone moves on. Real life isn't that neat. My wife and I are still working through things. We haven't rushed back into being the couple we were before because, honestly, that couple doesn't exist anymore. Something changed permanently. But maybe that's not always a bad thing. The old version of our marriage was built on the assumption that honesty was automatic. Now, if we rebuild, it has to be built intentionally. Slowly. With actions. Not promises. The biggest thing I've learned is that love by itself isn't enough. I loved my wife when I found out. I loved her when I was angry. I loved her when she moved out. But love doesn't erase damage. Love doesn't mean accepting anything someone does. Love also has to include respect, honesty, and choosing each other when things are difficult. I also learned to trust myself again. That might sound strange, but for months I questioned my own instincts. I thought I was paranoid. I thought I was overreacting. I thought I was somehow failing because I couldn't ignore what my gut was telling me. Turns out, I wasn't crazy. I was noticing things. And I should have trusted myself sooner. For anyone reading this who is going through something similar, I don't have some magical advice that fixes everything. I don't know if every marriage can survive betrayal. I don't know if every person deserves another chance. What I do know is this. Don't make decisions based only on fear. Don't stay because you're afraid of starting over. Don't leave only because other people tell you what you should do. Take the time to figure out what you actually want. And most importantly, don't lose yourself trying to save a relationship that someone else wasn't protecting. As for me, I don't know what the future looks like. Maybe my wife and I will rebuild something stronger. Maybe we'll eventually realize that too much was broken. But either way, I'm going to be okay. The person I was before all of this is gone. But I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. I learned that losing someone's trust is easy. Getting it back is the hardest thing in the world. And sometimes the person you have to learn to trust again